So, welcome to the Business Spotlight series. My name is Steve Chiama, and I'm the owner of the Action Coach franchise in Fairfax, Virginia. I'm your host today of the Business Spotlight podcast. And today I have the pleasure to introduce Murray Oles, owner and president of CHALEX Corporation, as my guest. And today we're going to talk about Murray's business, his journey into ownership, challenges, best practices, share a peek into what it's really like to build and operate a business. So if this is your first time on the channel, be sure to like and subscribe to get notifications when new shows like this drop. Murray, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. And if you would, please give us a little bit of background about who you are and tell us a little bit about your business.
Well, hi, Steve. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. I've been in this business for the last, I guess it's 24 years now. So
Wow.
time flies when you're having fun, as they say. My background is in communications and really print communications, and got into the business around 2002 when things were changing very rapidly in the corporate environment. And my partner and I ended up being together serendipitously in that we got a problem presented to me by a client that I was trying to get a job with or consulting. It was after 9/11, and the problem that we needed to solve was, where is my job in a project management world where the client that we were working with had multiple printing plants and multiple brand clients. They were specifically in the packaging prime label marketplace. And their problem was that with the six plants that they had and clients that often had jobs in multiple plants, they needed to answer the question, where is my job, in a world that wanted jobs faster, cheaper, better, and it was a difficult question to resolve, and one that led us to the conclusion that it was business process management that was at the heart of what they were trying to do, and that they had about 180,000 labels they were managing across maybe 250 to 400 clients
Wow.
that they were working with, and the average invoice for 10,000 labels could be $100,
Mhm.
because some of these things are really fairly inexpensive, and so their administrative costs of being able to serve the client had reached the point where they were literally catching up to the total price of the job. Uh, and growth is great, but growth when it erodes your profits uh, can be a real challenge. And
Mhm.
so we found ourselves grappling with the situation with this one client and realized through the discussions that business process management is really common to all businesses. And where's my job, or what's next, or what's the process, are questions that every business has to kind of come to grips with. And the real challenge when you're in the service industry like this and you have hundreds of clients, each, although they're having a similar workflow process, they all have a very unique workflow process and a very unique ontology or nomenclature that they're working with in how they do business.
Mhm.
And the solutions, can be a one-off. And we looked across the marketplace and saw many, many solutions out there, all of which were variations on the same theme, but highly optimized for each type of client.
Mhm.
And the end result was the conclusion that a different type of solution was needed. And that's what's really got us into CHALEX and trying to develop a SaaS-based solution, a solution that could be configured for this one client that had many, many customers, but for any client that had unique workflows and unique processes. And that's really what I think fueled the interest. And the client that we worked with was a good sized client. And so they really retained us on a consulting basis, and they wrote a contract with us that was large enough that we decided we'd form a business around it.
Mm. Mm.
So that's kind of how we got started in 2002. And as it rolled on and we got other clients, it was always through kind of word of mouth
Hmm.
and a lot of serendipity. You meet people along the way. Somebody calls. You know, it's the relationship that you build over your career that often opens doors for you that you don't expect.
Yeah. 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 Let's talk a little bit about the structure of the business. Couple of things that come to mind. You mentioned a partner. Are there, at this point, outside investors? Are there other partners? Are there
Yeah,
other
we
sources of funding?
no. What we've done is tried to keep it fairly tight.
Hmm.
We're not kids. We've both had successful careers in the past, and we came to the conclusion that we wanted to have fun more than anything else.
Hmm.
And that having worked for large corporations and myself, a Fortune 100 company that was on the New York Stock Exchange, and going to board meetings with the Wall Street folks and dealing with all of that side of the business, you learn an awful lot about business and how
Yes.
they get valued and what the turnover looks like and where the real quality of life is in running a business. And so that got to us, late in life, we decided that we'd have this business, mainly because we were at least at that point where we wanted to control our destiny.
Very good. Very good. So, with your experience, and you know this as well as I, most business startup, the owner or owners wear all the hats: the marketing hat,
Yeah,
the sales hat, the do the work hat, the bookkeeping hat, the cash flow management hat, the HR hat if you've got people.
yeah.
At this point, you've probably learned those having all those hats is probably not the best way to go. Which hats do you have on at this point?
Well, let's just say the one that we took off right away, day one, was we brought on a very good business accounting and business
Good,
consulting firm.
good,
One that has been around a long time, and one that specialized in S corps and LLCs, and
good.
specifically did not service any of the publicly traded companies. Wasn't getting involved in that quagmire of you know public information and
Right.
the investment market. So we did that right away, and to this day, even every payroll, every expense check, all of the financial side runs through that branch of the relationship, and we don't own that. We've contracted with that since day one. They're a great little firm. They manage many $100 million small businesses, which are, and yet they'll manage our tiny little business with the same amount of care and personal attention and just, the assurance that you're not going to get a call from some tax authority, and the way taxes work now, when you're providing a digital service like a SaaS service, different state legislatures are taxing differently, and our
Mm-hmm.
accountant is staying on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
Maryland decided this last year, 2025, that they were going to tax SaaS revenue, which they passed the law, and it's on a state tax level. So, you have to be on top of that, and you do need to at least report and stay compliant.
Yeah.
And so that hat I don't wear. Um,
Good.
the marketing hats I do wear, and I've tried all kinds of things. And when traveling is more difficult today than it ever was. Back in the early days of starting the business, I traveled a lot, and I went to a
Mm-hmm.
lot of trade shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been around a lot of trade shows, traveled around the world to big printing trade shows, and I know a lot of people. But it really, what you learn as you start to work these different venues is that um, it's a huge investment to
Yes.
bootstrap or to pull up, a technical company, a SaaS company,
Hmm.
so that it becomes, ubiquitously known in the industry as the go-to client.
Hmm.
The amount of money that goes into trade shows, and the expense of being there, and then the engagements with the client, and the preparation of collateral materials, and the updating of your website, and all of this coordinated activity, um, that has been a challenge.
Hmm.
And I have tried a lot of different things, including the scenario where people bring leads to you, and they use their magic formula on LinkedIn to find you qualified leads, or you get an email. I've got a list of all of
Yeah.
these
Right.
companies in your area. We've tried them all, kind of, well, not all of them, but we've tried enough of them to know that it's not much. It's like going to the carnival and trying to get
Hmm.
the baseball in the bottle, or
Yeah.
the milk can. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
And in the 20 years that I've been in business, I've never ever gotten a job through the website, or a project through a outside marketing firm. It has always come down to a phone call, a relationship, a discussion, and a leap forward. But it's just been brutal trying to deal with the marketing channels. And so I wear that hat, and I find myself saying no thank you to more people than I care to, as they try to win business from us.
Hmm.
um, and I don't have an answer for it, other than to say that you do need to try to establish yourself as an authority in the area that you're working in. And I think sharing your thoughts, I think uh, having a presence online and LinkedIn. I do believe that if you can afford to get in front of clients at a venue, it's worthwhile.
Hmm.
Um, but it can be extremely painful from a financial scenario. You go to New York, you rent a space, you're into it for 5,000, 10,000, and then as you bring in other people and start working on it, it can become a real number, and it's a cost that comes right off the top. So
Yep. Right.
it's a tough one. The other hats I wear are product design,
Hmm.
and that's really the big one, and that's where my background has been. I think most successful is I'm more of a creative thinker, and
Hmm.
a kind of a an action activator type of person. I
Hmm.
look at process, and I have for my whole career been involved in project management.
Hmm.
It's always whether it's a job to reproduce, some sort of advertising or a catalog. Had an interesting job where we produced an entire trading card series for the NBA. And it was, that type of job project, putting pieces in place and applying and learning critical thinking along the
Hmm.
way. And
Hmm.
and you know, I've come full circle back to where the critical thinking piece really fits. And today, more than ever, you have to question whether or not you believe what you're hearing. Uh,
Hmm.
and that's part of critical thinking, is being able to, listen to what's being said, uh, and put it in a constant context of, all right, do I really believe this? And what do I know that will support, or what can I
Mm.
find that will
Right.
support this belief? Because there's an awful lot of stuff out there. And I take, for example, the latest thing I hear about is vibe coding. And I don't know if you've heard about this term, but
No, that's a new name to me.
there's an article in the journal this week about it, and there's been several. And it's sort of like, you know, I think of Cheech and Chong, and lighting up a fatty, and getting into the vibe of
Yeah, right. That's
coding
the
a
what comes to my mind.
Yeah, well, like and vibe coding is sort of like have an idea. Step one, have an idea. Come up with a brainstorm, have an idea. Step two is gather all your data. Whoa, that's not a vibe.
Right.
You know? And
That
then
sounds
step
like
three is
engineering to me.
yeah, and step three is design your dashboard. Okay, so I could design the dashboard and I can have an idea. Getting all the data, knowing that the data is right, validating the data is like, uh-oh, that's real work. That's real work. You can't vibe the data. And yet,
Right.
the concept here is that, okay, well, I have this sort of notion of the data and I'll vibe it that way. Well, no, the problem that I've come across, and in 20 years in business, that are in my business, and even the 25 years before that, the biggest problem I've run up against in trying to justify an expenditure for a large corporation, I think, is validating the data.
Hmm.
They don't believe they being corporations that are running SAP and collecting data, and looking at inventory and movement of inventory and, all of these different factors, they get to the point where one arm, which is usually marketing, the other arm is usually, production and operations, and maybe IT is in one camp or the other, but they get to the point where you make a proposal and then the people reviewing the proposal say, well, we don't really believe that data. I said, okay, well, why don't you believe that data? Well, people don't really comply properly with, our process to enter the data. And so we can't trust it. And then you start getting into this go rope of, well, where is it that it all falls apart? And a lot of times there's an anecdote to that. That is, there's story about a job that went through that caused, you know, a huge amount of pain for which the bruises and the, strains are still being worked out. And they've adopted a strategy or a process that is extremely inefficient, but allows them to sleep at night.
That fits my experience when I worked in corporations going through these gyrations as well. Yes.
I'm also the Six Sigma guy, the Lean guy, the ISO 2000 guy. I've been through and part of all of these different things. And at the end of the center of it is critical thinking. You know,
Mhm.
are you able to look at what you're seeing, look at the data, believe the data, and look at it from enough angles that you can prove that what you've got is right. And so, when we're sitting here looking at where our business is and what we've done with it, well, we've worked with several companies that are pretty big and pretty global. And uh, Mars Pet Care comes to mind because we've been with them and they've been with us for 14 years now. They, are pretty straightforward. They know what they want. They're very well disciplined. They're very well organized. And the best customer you could ever want to have because you're like the Maytag repairman. It works. They know how to use it, and it's great. Uh, Most difficult customer we've ever had is one where everybody is sort of a group of independent brokers. And so you have it's like a law firm with a whole bunch of lawyers with special clients and special interests and special deals. And so, even if you're trying to write code to manage pricing and looking at cost versus estimate in how put out a proposal and activate the business and then capture costs and then resolve whether or not you're actually making money.
Yeah, well, there's a
you
detail. Yeah.
know, all of those things, come down to business process management, critical thinking, and really, the need for you to be able to put yourself in the client's shoes And the most difficult thing we came across with working with a broker is everybody was a different client.
Hmm.
Everybody had different types of work. Uh, their concerns were varying according to the way their market conditions operated. And their ability to engage with technology ran the gamut from not knowing how to open a web browser
Right.
or create a secure password. I mean, these are the things that you don't realize that you're going to get caught up in when you start to go into a SaaS business and you start, supporting all of the various users that come along. And that's really where, when we get into the brokerage world and we're trying to manage people that are handling pharma accounts, uh, promotions and on-site promotions and retail accounts, some handling high-end packaging where involving alcohol, others, selling candy. It, it's been a real interesting ride to provide a single solution that'll run 20 different workflows and allow you to roll that up to a dashboard that gives the user uh, what they need without giving them more than they need or more than they want.
Let's talk. You've referred to some entities. Let's talk a little bit about who are your preferred kinds of customers. And I'm assuming that doesn't really relate to industry. That probably relates to other characteristics.
Yeah, I think that's been an evolution for me in particular, because a lot of it, I had 25 years in the printing industry working for, the large billion-dollar companies and so forth, and the small little ones. And, so I led down that path, and I have relationships in the packaging world and the promotions and publishing and, the retail
Hmm.
advertising world. So, but business is business. And what
Hmm.
we found going into business process management is that there isn't a business out there that doesn't have to manage a process of some sort.
Hmm.
And then it got down to, if you're going to create a solution that, will allow you to configure a quality result for a broad range of businesses,
Hmm.
uh, then you need to find the discipline that serves all businesses. And that's where we got into BPM.
Hmm.
The BPM discipline has been around and is part of the Oasis standard. For 25 years, I think I've been going to BPM conferences. Uh, the interesting thing to me was that out of the printing industry, the only technology anybody ever talked about was digital asset management,
Hmm.
DAM technology. And I've watched these businesses sort of try to posture themselves as, problems arise in different sectors of markets where in DAM, it became media asset management when the guys on doing video and television and motion pictures wanted to have an asset management capability that allowed them to, manage, larger files, really is what it comes down to. And then you get into, the notion of product asset management or PIM, product information management.
Hmm.
And you have these configurations of these solutions that are variations on the same theme.
Hmm.
Uh, and yet each of them in the DAM world would then add a workflow component to the DAM. And what we discovered and realized, being, very familiar with DAM and having worked, my partner was the founding partner of Artesia, now OpenText, big DAM, probably the default player in the DAM industry today. And, he's constantly being asked to create workflows for customers.
Hmm.
And we came to the conclusion that it isn't about the workflow servicing the DAM, it's about the DAM servicing the workflow. And it's as simple as the horse and the cart. And
Hmm.
yet, because of the way technology evolved in the 90s, DAM technology got traction in one market, BPM technology got traction really in the back office, really processing invoices and the real grunt work in big businesses. BPM could do that and do it efficiently. So those two industries grew up not even knowing each other existed. I mean,
Hmm.
maybe knowing, but not really understanding. And certainly not to the extent that the critical thinking of what is the relationship between a business process and the services that you can bring to bear to make the process more efficient.
Hmm.
And we came to the conclusion that at the center of all of this is the business process. The dam is a service to the business, and depending on the nature of the business, the dam will be configured to perform the function, you know, specific to that business. Um, that's proven to be really worthwhile. And then on top of that, we came to the conclusion that project management is in the context of projects can have many, many jobs, and each job can have a different workflow associated with it. And so you had to have this notion of hierarchy and being able to manage a corporate calendar that looks at the campaign and the rolling campaigns of corporations that could be multiple months long or multiple, like 18-month cycle. There's a lot of we got involved with the International Olympic Committee, and it's a 4-year cycle and two 2-year cycles. And we realized then just how unique business process needed to be. And when we were working with the IOC, they showed us through their requirements how important a rules engine was. And a rules engine is essentially looking at the calendar and changing the rules as the game changes, game clock changes as you get closer to and maybe into overtime and into the last 30 seconds that goes on in a basketball game. This is what you apply to these things. And so bringing more tools to the process is what is allowing the process to become more efficient and giving you more certainty to the data. And the data is what, if you're going to vibe code it, going all the way back around to vibe code, the data has to be solid. It can't be intuitive. It can't be gut. I worked for a company, I guess probably 15 years ago. And I walked in there and I sat down and I was helping them with their workflow and trying to get things going. And we came to the conclusion that I got up out of the end of the first, I think it was a 3-week engagement. I said, okay, I can't help you. I said, I can't help you until you learn how to help yourself. And the first thing you got to do to learn how to help yourself is you can't be closing January and June. You cannot be closing January and June. You have to close January and February, And they were trying to just deal with they're in the trade show business.
Mm-hmm.
So they were managing booths and they're building booths and they're,
Mm-hmm.
renting carpet and putting carpet down and buying this and buying that, doing this and doing that. They wouldn't get all their invoices in for, and they weren't issuing purchase orders out of a central location. I said, if you don't do these things, you'll never have data you can trust, and you'll never have a metric that allows you to know where you are. Fast forward, 15 years later, they've sold the business. It went from 25 million to 300 million, and they did very, very well. But you got to be truthful. There's a point where you just have to say, you don't need me, you need an accountant. In fact, first thing you want to do is go in and fire that guy that you call an accountant. and,
Go get
and if you want, I'll do that for you as a parting shot. You don't have the balls to do it, then fine.
Yeah.
They called me Chainsaw Murray at one of the accounts I was at. So, that's the way life is.
You're reminding me of some of the experiences I had at some of the companies I worked for who were trying to install ERP systems back in the 90s. And the question was, were we designing the company to fit the system, or were we designing the system to fit the company?
Well, in the case of SAP, and
that's one. Yeah.
There were several companies that were in that business of
Hmm.
making it bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where it was all things. And that's what you see out there. When you get a technology company out there and they get some sort of traction. And I would take Salesforce.com as a good example of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're a really good CRM. Uh, now they're doing DAM and workflow and data and to the extent that it becomes an infrastructure.
Yes, right.
Yeah. And now it's really becoming the tail wagging the dog to some extent, depending upon whether you're in the operations and production, wing of the business, or you're on the sales and marketing wing of the business.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that the dynamic between the sales and marketing and operations and the technology that binds them together uh, is going through quite a catharsis and there's a lot of stuff falling out left and right, and AI is really um,
It's going to
it's
be a
an
whole new
interesting
wrinkle.
it's a catalyst. It's like
Hmm.
dropping what is it? You put a Mentos in a Diet Coke bottle and put the lid on it.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
It,
There's going
it,
to be
it
a reaction.
there's a reaction. Yeah, it's interesting because it's evolving so quickly. There's so much money involved, and the long tail of it is extremely uncertain.
So as you look back over these years, what's a memorable hurdle? And this is within your business now, the operation you're driving. What's the most memorable hurdle that you can recall and having to grow through in order to get to the next stage?
Probably technical hurdles,
Hmm.
probably managing expectations and
Hmm.
managing technical hurdles of the the whole issue of SaaS. We got in
Hmm.
early, and so being able to scale
Hmm.
and having to look at just multi-tenancy, I think, was probably the biggest issue that we threw our arms around. You create a solution. At the base of it, you have these tools that are configurable to each affiliated group or each business that you're supporting, and giving us the ability to create multi-tenancy in a way that is sort of a cookie cutter approach to a configuration that involves workflow and digital asset management, project management rules and taxonomies and archives. And, it's a long sort of spreading kind of capability that grows. Doing that in a multi-tenant environment is very desirable, but also
Hmm.
quite a challenge.
Hmm.
And, we were able to get very serious about investing in that. And that was one of the things that we had to do early on. We had to sort of step back and put a lot more effort into product development.
What
Um,
is the product and why is it desirable? Yeah.
right. We had to really step back because we had, our initial clients were the packaging clients. Then all of
Hmm.
a sudden, we got this deal with Miller Coors where they
Hmm.
wanted to do 14,000 promotions annually, and they were trying to manage this off a spreadsheet. And well, the guys
That's a
before had
lot of
done
rows.
that. Yeah, well, it was a lot of rows and a lot of pages,
Yeah.
and we were very successful in doing that. And one of the things that we had to really lock in on was the ability to do that and run workflows for completely different clients. So you're
Hmm.
running a packaging workflow for one client, and you're running a retail promotions workflow for the other on the same platform, and
Hmm.
with people hitting it at the same time, and then uploading files and downloading files and dealing with graphic files that are
Hmm.
gigabytes of data at a time when bandwidth is still in its sort of baby steps, maybe a little bit better than dial up, but
I
um,
think we were past the 286 computers at that point.
Yeah, exactly. The 386 is, a real big deal, right? And the ISDN line,
Yeah, yeah.
it was a big deal when you didn't have to hear the little chimes of the modem and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, fiber optic has made a big difference. But you're only as good as the last mile.
Hmm.
And what we've come up against, just talking about this brokerage account that was such a challenge, is the number of clients now working from home. The number of businesses now working from a residential area. You have no idea what the connectivity looks like in the last mile. And when you get into the home and you're dealing with somebody who is a product support specialist or, a project manager specialist, whatever, they're working from home.
Hmm.
Well, they got two teenage kids and they're both playing Minecraft,
Mm.
on the same,
On the same server,
on the same,
on the same
well,
line.
the same line, there,
Yeah,
and somebody else is watching a movie and you're
yeah.
complaining that you're trying to upload a gigabyte file or download it and it's taking too long.
And
How
you
do
got three
we
other
know?
businesses in the same neighborhood.
Right. How do
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And all of a sudden, because you're providing the service, it's your problem.
Hmm.
You need to solve this. And so that kind of brings us back down around to, what clients do we want to have and where do we, as we look forward? And really, because of the sophistication of the problem that you're solving, you need clients that have critical thinking skills.
Hmm.
You need clients that have leadership skills that
Hmm.
can, in fact, cut through the the myth, and a lot of the uncertainty that comes along with change. And
Hmm.
a lot of people, you know, are adverse to change, depending on where you are in your career curve. If you're young and kind of, learning new things and excited and things are going on great for you. If you're in your 50s and, kind of trying to hang in there before, you can tap your social security, uh, you're not really that open to retraining or, big changes. And of course, that has a double-edged sword. Those people have the most to offer in terms of domain knowledge and experience.
Yeah, right.
And so your challenge is to motivate them and make them feel comfortable because it's just a simple taking the step. You know, that's the reluctance or resistance to change. But once you understand how it helps, where it helps, you can become very confident and you can really accelerate. But
Yes.
it, it is a difficult time. The AI myth, and there's a lot of truth to what's happening out there, but there's also a great deal of speculation.
Hmm.
And, and in these times, the speculation tends to go towards the science fiction,
Mm.
in certain ways. And so,
Hmm.
again, critical thinking, get back to, fact, capturing data, understanding is it valid, and then, making a logical decision about it.
This kind of leads me into a question. Where do you see your business going over the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, I think really, as I look at what we're doing and what we're bringing to the marketplace, I see us more as enabling consultants and people that are critical thinkers
Hmm.
with a toolkit.
Hmm.
Uh, and the toolkit, we're trying to make it as ubiquitous as possible. And
Hmm.
we've made it up out of open source tools so that our
Hmm.
cost we're driving that cost lower and lower. And
Hmm.
so I think that the value proposition is going to lean more on results than on promises. And I think that uh, we're looking to relationships where uh, domain experts can take our kit and build on it for themselves and for their customers with the domain knowledge that they need to have. And so we don't really want to get too involved with the end user because there's too many of them. And when you get down to, hey, you really need to restart your browser, or, if you clear your cache, it'll all work. those things, we don't really want to do much of it anymore.
Got it.
There's no payback on it, right?
Mhm.
And yet it's a serious part of what you have to do when you've got many clients and that client is using a little tool of yours, but they're also spending another $10 million with you for these other services. And you can't piss them off with that little tool.
Do you see growth in this?
I do, but I see it through licensing the
Uh-huh.
technology, and
Hmm.
I see it through agency and distribution. I don't see it uh, organically so
Hmm.
much as I do, just through licensing. Because I
Uh-huh.
mean, we're really uh, the thing that we've kind of discovered in the last 6 months with AI and Claude and Chat GPT and things. We've taken modules that we have. It's a modular design. We took one of the
Hmm.
modules, and it's a modeling module. So it's a swim lane workflow modeling, and you could use it in BPM or
Hmm.
it's been around a long time. And there's this. We just loaded up the tool that we had into Chat and said, "Look, we want a Java pure JavaScript version of this."
Hmm.
And we want it to be able to do these things. And it did it within a day,
Hmm.
with my partner doing it and
Hmm.
asking the critical questions.
Right.
And this was our first real programming experience to
Hmm.
go into AI and say, hey, what could we do with it? And now we realize that the quality or the value of what we have is in the architecture and in the way
Hmm.
in which we put the pieces together so that the modules talk to each other in an accretive way, where
Hmm.
the more information, all the information is relational, and you get a bigger and bigger and more clear picture of the business. And so that's really the AI world has allowed us to look at the data stream that we have and plug that in as a pipe
Hmm.
into a learning model that
Hmm.
is not so broad and wide as all things to all people, but in fact
Hmm.
a learning model based on the real time gathering of data from business tasks completed,
Hmm.
comments made, files loaded, conferences held, results posted,
Hmm.
and all of that kind of pulling it together uh, according to the consumer of the information. And so if you're the
Hmm.
CEO or you're the head of marketing or you're the division manager, you want to have your own view of those things that fall within your purview.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's really where we've been focused. And from a growth standpoint, we're looking for distribution partners where, our license might be 20% of
Hmm.
what they're going to sell the solution to their users for.
Hmm.
And it could even be less than that as we start to
Hmm.
get into understanding what our role is and
Hmm.
what the uh, value is of having a tool that you can configure to produce a superior experience for your clients and b the market that they're in. Because
Hmm.
if you're our customer, you're serving a market.
Hmm.
And one of the markets I really want to get involved with and serve, we've had several discussions about licensing into this market, is the home care market.
Hmm.
And simply taking care of my ass when I get to the point where I need
Right.
somebody to wipe it.
Right.
It's like
Literally.
literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really, I think, a market that is going to be very entrepreneurial. Uh, it's going to be needing these kinds of, you know, process management capabilities so that you have, you know, collecting the right data and you're taking care of the patient or the client or whatever. Uh, and it has to be affordable, because our solution, we've never wanted to price it so that it was sort of a boutique thing.
Hmm.
Um, and we always wanted to price it so that everybody could use it. But what we've found is that the prices in technology-based pricing is a race to the bottom. Uh,
Yeah.
and so if you're going to get into the SaaS business and you think that, well, I'll charge $25 a month per user. It takes an awful lot of $25 a month to build up enough to cover one salary, let alone pay your liability insurance, your accountant, and all of the other SG&A things that fall into every business.
Right, right. You have some backgrounds that give you insights into valuations and things in that direction. Where do you see this helping you personally? Where will you go with this?
Well, I mean, as I look at it, my feeling is I'd like to, retain. I'm not really looking to sell the business so
Hmm.
much as I am looking to license the process and the technology. And I
Hmm.
really think that the business is more of a consultative business than it is, like a product business.
Hmm.
And I think that there's a lot of training involved in working
Hmm.
with different distributors and people. So I,
Hmm.
I see, the things that excite me is working with, intelligent people who have great ideas and challenge us, challenge us to work with the configuration. And maybe we need to bring in another tool. But now it's so easy to do that with the
Hmm.
AI capabilities.
Hmm.
It gets full circle. Do you trust the data?
Hmm.
And if you can trust the data and the data is illuminating,
Hmm.
then you can really build on it. And,
Hmm.
when you look at all of the different, you have ERP systems and you have CRM systems, and then you have MRM, managing resource management systems, or manufacturing resource management systems. And understanding how all of these things have grown over the last 40 years into business and been knitted together through SAP and CRM and SaaS platforms now, uh, the whole world's a big oyster. I mean, there's an
Hmm.
awful lot going on out there.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's jobs coming and going. I think the future looks an awful lot more like a project oriented business world. And
Yeah.
a lot of people, when you get to be, somewhat knowledgeable, or at least you burned your fingers on the stove enough that somebody else is willing to ask you to teach them how to cook. Um, you know, I see myself personally being more involved in consulting.
Okay.
Um, you know,
Very good.
a consultative business sale around BPM, DAM, and our technology and everybody else's. I mean, it's you can't. I don't think that the idea of it's our way or the highway
Hmm.
floats anymore. And
Hmm.
I think that SAP is a good example, and that they built their business, and same with Salesforce.com. They're trying to be all things to all people, and trying to grow horizontally as well as vertically. And I think you dilute the overall product as you take on more and more, and especially as you do it through acquisition.
Hmm.
This is the other thing when you start looking at valuations and you look at the way people exit and what you get when you buy a business from someone who was a founder,
Hmm.
um, and then you buy it again after that VC maxed out, and you get tumbled and rolled and rolled,
Hmm.
uh, and sooner or later, it becomes a financial play.
Hmm.
And at that point, the business is really clipping its coupons, and it's a token, it's a trade item.
Hmm.
And I try to avoid that. I find that, yeah, that's an interesting profession.
Hmm.
Um, it's extremely stressful, and and I've worked in it, and it's a young man's game. It
Hmm.
really
It
is.
is. Yeah.
You know,
We could probably go down these roads all day, but in the interest of time,
sure.
probably ought to start wrapping up. Let's touch on a few rapid fire questions.
Good luck.
What what would you say is a key to success for you?
I think it really comes down for us. Uh, I guess it's that happy client that says, I really like this.
Hmm.
That's really at the end of the day, if I have somebody that tells me that what we've given or what we've sold them, uh, is changed the way they do business in a way that
Hmm.
has changed them forever.
Hmm.
Um, that's good enough for me.
Good, 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 good. If you and I were having coffee down at the coffee shop, and some business owner walked in, he's just getting his started up. What's one piece of advice you would share with him?
Well, I would say manage scope as narrowly as you can,
Mm.
um, you know, and be ever mindful of scope creep.
Hmm.
Um, you know, get in and get a small, a piece of the action. Just get a piece. Don't try to get the whole thing, and try to keep yourself um, focused on the right decision makers. One of the
Hmm.
hardest things to do today is figure out who has the decision making ability within a company.
Oh, yeah, very good.
And one of the things that you run up against is you develop relationships with people that become very key to the business. You got to go beyond those. You got to get further embedded because
Hmm.
people are moving around more today than they ever have before. I have,
That is
an
true.
associate that's a good friend that I've known him for years, you know, selling a lot of in big accounts, millions of dollars worth of business, one day. And then the next day, the three of his VPs, the company was bought by another company. There was a, you know, cleanse, if you will, or
Hmm.
catharsis, whatever you want to call it. And all of his contacts were gone. And soon thereafter, the business was gone.
Yeah,
And it was, because relationships drive more business in this country than anything else.
yeah, right.
And so, narrow your scope, focus in, get a piece of the action, and then once you have a piece of the action, become a friend to everyone that you can in that business. Get to know the people who your contacts work with, how they are being mentored, and become a part, even if it's an extended part, but become an integral part that everybody that in there knows that your role, knows that you're performing something that is unique and uh, irreplaceable if possible. Um,
Good,
but
good.
limit the scope. You can't be all things to all people
Yeah, the old
without.
cliche about niche.
Well, it is. It's not a cliche. I mean, it's
Yeah,
true.
yeah, it really is.
And when you go outside your niche, understand you're stepping on other people's toes, so you're making other enemies.
Yeah,
Figure out who you want to, go toe to toe with.
yeah, good, 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 good. What's one book you've been reading recently or reading now that's had impact on how you're
Ooh,
doing what you're doing?
I guess, I mean, I don't read as much as I used to. Do a lot of podcast listening and that sort of stuff. But
Hmm.
I thought the goal was of the books I've read over
That's
the
a good book.
years.
Yeah.
I thought the goal was most relatable.
Hmm.
It took you on a journey, but it did so in a way that it humanized the whole business of being in business.
Hmm.
And I recommend that book. The other one, I mean, the Know Your Strengths and First Break All the Rules, those two books,
Yeah.
um, they were formative. I mean, I found out some things about myself going through the Gallup, uh, you know,
Hmm.
exercise, and they sponsored those two books,
Uh-huh.
and knowing your strengths and especially if you're in a management role where you've got to know other people's strengths and then this whole quadrant thing of which quadrant does your personality fall in, and how do you get this
Yep.
person to work with that person? And these team managers need to understand how to you know uh, I guess emote, and I
Hmm.
guess the what they call it lately is the emotional intelligence, or your it's
Yeah. All of
your
those pieces help there. Yeah.
yeah, those, I mean, it depends on how big you're going to get. But if you're going to manage 10 people, you're big. You've
Yeah.
got your
Well,
hands full.
yeah. How big do you want to be is another question.
Well, yeah, uh, as small as possible with the largest amount of income.
There's a trade-off right there.
Six, seven.
Yeah. Yeah. You've had a great journey. You've done a lot of things. You've learned a lot of things. You've tried a lot of things. Of all of that, what are you most proud of?
Oh, gosh. I think, the I got into this business when it was changing from film to digital, and I'm most proud of the things that I did before anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I had the opportunity to work on the first digital color scanner,
Mm-hmm.
which was the first to digitize an image and
Mm-hmm.
allow you to then begin to paginate and retouch. And I was
Mm-hmm.
in on all of that in New York when we tried to bring digital retouching to the New York art market, the
Mm-hmm.
advertising market. They didn't want anything to do with people from the printing and graphic arts because their
Mm-hmm.
whole relationship was based on their interaction with the artists that were in the dye transfer print houses doing
Mm-hmm.
hand retouching of the
Mm-hmm.
photography before it would go to reproduction. And that hand retouching became digital retouching. They
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't touch it until it was a transparency. Once it was a piece of art, then they would touch it, but they wouldn't take it as a digital file. And that was for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a really great time in New York running the Super Studio, where
Mm-hmm.
we were doing digital advertising and producing 8 by 10 transparencies digitally with
Mm-hmm.
essentially laser imagers that were repurposed out of the satellite imaging industry for Landsat. So, it's just this business. The thing I'm most proud of is I have been fortunate to be on the leading, bleeding edge of technology
Mm-hmm.
since 1976. And so I
It's been a
know a
lot of
lot.
movement since then.
I mean, the whole the whole notion of a business being upside down financially is where the cost to get into the business is less than the cost of getting out of the business. That's when a business is upside down. And technology businesses, and a good example would be, let's say, Cranston Surrey or Robert Abel, or these companies that were the pioneers of digital animation. And Omnibus went out and bought a Cray computer for $6 million, and it was a little hard to depreciate that.
Yeah.
After Silicon Graphics came out with their $175,000 terminal, that would
Mm-hmm.
be faster than the Cray. And
Mm-hmm.
you're just computing, and you're
Mm-hmm.
charging per computing minutes, and
Mm-hmm.
so the industry became upside down very quickly because of the advances in technology and the notion of charging for compute time or
Mm-hmm.
processing time
Which
instead
is
of charging
probably the
for the
beginning of
product.
SaaS.
It's the beginning of the grace to the bottom, is what it
Mm-hmm.
was. you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just uh, technical advantages are very, very fleeting. Um,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and so it might open the door for you, but you have to have a relationship that you can build on, and you have to continuously provide value.
And
And
don't
there will
stay
all
stuck in the past.
no, because there's a stealth competitor coming in to just eat your lunch.
Yeah, right behind you. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
like Airbnb. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
who thought? Yeah,
Yeah.
well, shoulda, woulda,
Yeah.
coulda.
Yeah. Could have been there first, right? Or Uber.
Right. Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
Following up on this, just for fun, let's flip the question around. If there was one thing you could magically improve with a wand this afternoon in your business, what would it be?
Well, I guess it would be awareness. I mean, at the end of
Hmm.
the day, the hard thing is to have people know you're there without you spending a boatload of money
Mm.
to kind of stand on the same mountaintops as your competitors and
Hmm.
try to either put on more of a show or a spectacle or yell louder or whatever to try to get attention. It's you know very difficult to compete
Hmm.
in a global environment on technology, especially
Hmm.
SaaS technology,
Hmm.
and particularly when the cost of producing a solution is relatively it's lower today than it was yesterday, and it'll be less tomorrow than it
Hmm.
was today. And those kinds of issues make it really um, critical to avoid missteps.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know you can't recover, and knowing who to say no to doing business with is probably as important as finding the right companies to do business with.
Yeah.
And certainly that's my experience.
Good. Good, good, good. So, most important question. How can people who want to know more get in contact with you?
Well, we keep a website out there. It's CHALEX, CHALEX.com. And we're on LinkedIn. But contact us directly.
Cool.
We'll spin up a demo. If you're serious, we'll spin up a pilot. It's pretty easy to do. And so getting people involved, the issue is to stand out. The issue is
Hmm.
to understand. And, we're not going to, go out and drop huge amounts of money on trade shows. And I'm not going the Gartner route because I know how they operate. And,
Hmm.
you can't be independent if the only people you report on are the people that pay you. Uh, and these things don't come cheaply. The Gartner Magic Quadrant sort of BS, is it's what you pay for.
Yep. Good.
It,
Good. Good. Last question.
mm,
What's most inspiring to you today?
I think the most inspiring thing today, and I have to kind of ponder this a bit, but where AI can go and what it's capable of doing is very inspiring. You
Mm.
know, it's also terrifying, um, but I'd like to look at it as a glass half full.
Hmm.
Um, I, I read the the stuff going on about chat and its competitors, and the philosophical side of where AI goes. I don't think there's any stopping it. The damn genie's out of the bottle.
Yep. Right.
The question of critical thinking does still applies more than ever before, and I think um, the moral compass of the whole thing is not to be trifled with.
This gets to the moral compass of the people driving it, but
Well, that's it.
that's
And
another question.
that's the terrifying part about it.
That's the terrifying part. Yeah, I'll go with that. This has been awesome. You shared an awful lot of really great insights from a lot of perspectives. Um, there is a whole lot to this question of understanding what your product is, who your
Right.
customer is, what's important to them. That's a really, really important set of issues.
It
And
is.
then where's the industry going at the same time? And how do we make sure we financially have a path down that
Yeah.
road? Those are
Right.
all really critical issues. And it's not just SaaS where that's important. That
Oh
can
no.
be almost anything.
Yeah, SaaS is a convenient method and a logical method of
Mm-hmm.
engaging, and bringing buyers and sellers together. That's
Mm-hmm.
really what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's a very efficient and a new tool. And AI is going to allow you to configure your own tools and make your own dashboard. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, if you're going to be vibe coding it, there's going to be a whole lot of hacks out there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the three steps that were detailed in the journal article last week on vibe coding, step two, get the data,
Yeah, well,
validate
there's
the
a
data.
minor detail right there.
Yeah, there's three steps. Step one, have an idea. Step two, get the data. Step three, build the terminal.
Yeah,
Well, okay.
yeah. Step two is not trivial.
Well, the vibe on step two is pretty loud.
Yeah, it
It's
is. It is.
pretty
Awesome.
chaotic.
Awesome. So, everybody watching, I'm going to ask you to save the show, come back and watch it again. Murray really has shared some great business insights here, not to mention some great SaaS insights. So, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications every time a conversation like this one drops. Thank you to everyone who joined us today, and a special thank you to Murray for being with us, being vulnerable, and sharing his insights. Really appreciate that.
Great time, Steve. Thank you.